Good morning and welcome to the Ad Hoc Superintendent Search Committee meeting on February 11th, 2021 at opening the meeting at 10:11 a.m. With us here today, we have a representative from McPherson and Jacobson, Executive Recruitment and Development Firm, Dr. John Grotto, I apologize, sir. We have Tara Kinsella, Stacy Hines, Sandra Ziem, Heather Raymond, Gloria Timmons, and of course our ETV folks. So actually, let's call this meeting to order. Sandra Ziem?
Yes, here. I'm sorry.
Heather Raymond?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Gloria Timmons?
Here.
And Jessica Brown, I am here. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Grotto this morning. And if you'd like to go ahead, begin your presentation, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
First, let me introduce myself. My name is John Grotto, and I am a search consultant, one of about 100 search consultants for McPherson and Jacobson Executive Search Company. And my qualifications for being a search consultant are that I was a kindergarten through 12th grade principal for 5 years, and then a superintendent of schools for 23 years. And following that, I have since 2012 been a professor of educational leadership at Virginia Tech. I teach courses in a principal preparation program, and at the doctoral level, I teach courses in a superintendent development program. And in addition, I've done about 5 searches for McPherson and Jacobson. And most recently, I did a search in 2019, the spring of 2019. I led the Manchester search nearby you. So those are my qualifications for being a superintendent search consultant. So let me share with you a short presentation, and I will walk through the search process and leave you plenty of time for answers. Can you all see my screen? Where
Yes.
It says, okay, great. Okay, great.
So if it's possible, I was going to say, put it on full screen. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So we have a saying here: quality is never accidental. It's always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and direction and skill execution. And it represents the wise choice of many alternatives. So we have a pretty refined process. We've been in business since 1991, and since that time have done about 700 searches. So we have a pretty refined process. Not to say that it's set in stone, but it's a pretty refined process that results in really good quality superintendents staying for a long time. And a key to our process is meaningful stakeholder involvement. Because when community members, teachers, administrators, parents, support staff, students know that they've been involved in a meaningful way in the process, they tend to support the school board's decision. So we have 5 phases, and I'll walk through them with you. The first phase, very important phase, and I mentioned to you earlier that you would have some work on your part to get a new superintendent in place by July 1. The very first thing you ought to do is establish the characteristics that you want in your new superintendent. And I have several brochures I can send you to give you some examples of that, but really you need to think, what are the characteristics that you think are essential in your new superintendent? Because that becomes my marching orders to find a new candidate. Actually, I won't be working on this by myself. I'll have another co-consultant. It becomes our marching orders to find someone with the attributes that you identify. And then I'll work with you to establish a timeline for a search. And then we'll advertise in these 5 nationwide sources. We have our own website, and we have about a dozen superintendents positions advertised there on the McPherson and Jacobson website. Most school administrators looking for a position, check with the American Association of School Administrators website. There's a site on the Education Week website. Education Week is a weekly magazine for educators, and there's a site there called Top School Jobs. Right now, there's about 30 superintendent jobs advertised throughout the nation. We'll also advertise in the National Alliance of Black School Educators and the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. So those 5 nationwide advertising sites will cast a really wide net and draw the attention of people from throughout the nation who are looking for a superintendent position. Now, I mentioned community involvement in a meaningful way. I would like to have Zoom meetings with certainly teachers, administrators, community members, and support staff. You can decide if you want high school students to be part of that as well, in which I will ask them some questions. I'll show you them on the next slide. Those are pretty important because people know that their voice is heard. And we can also put a survey on your website asking the same questions. For Manchester, for example, we put it in half a dozen different languages so that people who speak languages other than English can also weigh in, or people who don't have time to go to these Zoom forums can also have their voice heard by the online survey. I recommend posting the survey results on your website to show people that their voice has actually been heard, their comments have been recorded accurately, and that they are available for the prospective candidates. In those stakeholder groups, I ask people 4 questions. First question, what makes your community a good place to live? Secondly, what makes this a good school district for students and staff? Now, both of those are really important questions to attract people who might not be familiar with Nashua. And it gives them an accurate answer about why that's a nice area to live and work in, and why it's a good school district for students and staff. Certainly, people may apply who have children in school. They're going to want to know, why is this a good school district for their children? And then the next 2 questions help to frame the position. What are the issues that the new superintendent needs to know about as he or she comes into the district? And what skills, qualities, and characteristics will the new superintendent need in order to be successful? So I would expect in a district the size of Nashua, we'll probably have a couple hundred answers to all those questions, which I would encourage you to post on your website so that prospective candidates can see all of the answers to these questions and help them to decide if they are a good fit for this district or not. And then we work with you to develop a brochure about the position. And again, that just helps to attract candidates and give a really good overview of the Nashua area, both the school district and the community. And I have a bunch of samples I can share with you. I did the Burlington, Vermont search last year, the Manchester search before that. I have a bunch that I can share with you to give you a good idea of ways to make, to really accurately portray the attractive features of both your school district and your community. And then we began advertising those 5 sites I showed you previously. And that's where I get to work in recruiting and tracking applicants and vetting the candidates. In fact, that's what I do. That's probably the main benefit of our company is we do a thorough vetting of all the candidates, reference checking, and making sure that the candidates are who they portray themselves. I will help you to develop interview questions based upon those qualifications that you identified. I told you that's the first and most important step, and I'll help you to, I'll give you a whole bunch of questions that really will get to the heart of, does the person possess those qualities that you have identified? And that'll work with you to select applicants to be interviewed. I expect you'll probably get 35 to 40 applicants, and you can't interview all of them, and some of them won't have the skills that you'll want to interview for anyway. So I'll recommend maybe 5 to 7, maybe 5 to 10 candidates that meet your qualifications. You can decide then who you want to interview. And oftentimes the school board wants the stakeholders involved in the interview process in some form. So I can help you to work through how you might set up interview committees of stakeholders, and then you select the superintendent. And we also will help you, after you select the superintendent, to set up performance objectives so that the superintendent doesn't have 9 bosses, but has a collective direction from the whole board about what you want the superintendent to accomplish. And so we're pretty confident in that process working well. We're so confident, in fact, that if the new superintendent leaves for any reason within 2 years, we will repeat the process at just the cost of doing so. So throughout the process, I would be the lead consultant, and I would work regularly with the school committee, the school board, to keep them informed. I'd give them updates along the way. We'd meet regularly to hash through the interview process, to decide on compensation, to review the stakeholder report that I would compile, and to select interview questions. So we'll be working hand in hand throughout that process. Jessica, you asked, is this doable by July 1st? Yes, it is. It is doable, but by July 1st, we'll just have to stay the course and work steadily on these issues right here so that we can get a quality person in place. So let me summarize what our search services are, and this will take maybe 5 minutes, and then I'll answer any questions you have. All the school board members get an opportunity to share what they think are the attractive candidates or the attractive qualifications that they want in their new superintendent. You'll have to come to some agreement on your top 5 or so attributes, but you all get an opportunity to share your thoughts in that area. We'll have a timely process. I'll keep you informed about what needs to be done and when it needs to be done, and certainly do my part. Everybody in the school district gets an opportunity to share their thoughts with significant public involvement, and the community as well. You know, the input of teachers, administrators, support staff is critical, but so is the input of parents. So we'll advertise throughout the nation. We'll recruit and screen qualified applicants. We'll assist you to the extent that you want the interview process, whether it's being there to help you or simply helping you set up committees. We'll do a thorough background check on all the applicants, treat all of them fairly. I send an email acknowledging the applicants when they apply and telling them the timeline. We have a home office that also works hand in hand with us to help vet candidates and to help us stay on course. I'll send you regular updates. I'll present the highest qualified candidates to you for consideration to interview, and then we'll assist with the transition. So there were 13 things there that really encompass everything that we do in this search process. And I'll send you a copy of this survey if you'd like it, or this PowerPoint presentation if you'd like it, Jessica. Let me know. So all that to say, anybody can talk, but the proof is in the pudding. So here's the proof that we think is significant. According to the National School Boards Association, the average length of a superintendent staying in one position is 3 to 4 years. But over the past 5 years, about 80% of the administrators that we have done searches for are still in the position for which they are hired. And over 50% of those administrators are still in the position for which they were hired within the past 10 years. So that process that I described results in candidates knowing the district well before they even apply. And, again, looking at all those stakeholder comments, looking at the criteria the board has identified, and the vetting process that we do against the attributes that you have identified helps to find people who are point on for your particular position. So that brings us back to the point where we started, that quality, the result of our search process, is not accidental. It's the result of a well-refined process and attention to detail and due diligence in vetting candidates, which helps you find a candidate that is the right fit for Nashua. So that's what I wanted to share with you, and I welcome any questions from you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Dr. Grotto. I'd like to open the floor for any questions. Go ahead, Ms. Timmons.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I do have a question about process elimination. When I was in HR and I got hundreds of applications, I know how
Hold on, can I pause you for just 1 second, Gloria?
Sure.
John, could you unshare your screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you again. I don't know if you heard me in the beginning about process elimination. Prior to me coming onto the board, I I process a lot of the applications, and matter of fact, I would get hundreds for one job. My question to you is, how do you go about your process of elimination, and who work with you eliminating those people?
Okay. Well, the main way to do that, Gloria, is through comparing the candidate's qualifications to the qualifications established by the Board of Education. So let's say you want someone who's a strong communicator, who has strong financial acumen, who has the ability to relate well to staff and to the public. Whatever the qualifications you are, or you identify, we look for people who have those qualifications. And if people don't have a history of having those qualifications and implementing them, well, then we rule them out. We also look for certification, of course, in New Hampshire. They can get that, but that's another quality. And then we look, of course, at their current position, and we look at their past experience. And, I don't know if you heard earlier, but I was a superintendent for 23 years and have attended about 700 Board of Education meetings during that time. So I have a pretty solid understanding of what it takes to be a superintendent, and likewise, what boards want in their superintendent. And my co-leader in this search would be Chris Dinkin. He's a professor at Seton Hall University, and he was an assistant superintendent of a school district with about 11,000 students, very similar to your district. So between the two of us, we will keep asking those questions. Who's the best fit? Who's got the most experience and the best experience suitable for what Nashua has identified that they want?
Okay, on the follow-up question, other than the obvious, which those were the obvious, how do you eliminate several people with similar qualifications?
We do a whole lot of reference checking. Of course, as a person, you know that candidates always put down references who are going to speak favorably to them. That's quite apparent. But then we also ask the question, well, who else should we contact regarding this candidate? And people are always actually willing to share other names that we should check with, and we do. And oftentimes we check with people that they don't even put down on their reference sheet. So we do extensive reference checking. We also do a lot of reading of newspaper articles about them. So that's how we do it. We dig and we dig to make sure that we're really presenting really high quality people to you.
And I do have another question. I might have several. One of the questions on page 3 of the slide that you presented, you said evaluations. If you could put up that particular slide, I want to point something out to you. It was to phase 3, I think it was on.
Okay, let's see here. Let's see.
Logic view. Okay. Okay.
Phase 3 was
Evaluation reference checks of applications. Evaluation and reference checks of application. What do you mean specifically about evaluations and reference check? I know about the reference checks, that's easy, but what I'm confused about, what do you mean about the evaluation piece?
okay. So the reference checks, you know what reference checks are. So,
Yes.
and, I can type pretty well, and I record pretty accurately what people tell me as they speak. And so I have almost a verbatim transcript of what they tell me about the candidates. So then I take that information and I evaluate, does that fit the attributes that the board has identified, or does it not fit? That's the evaluation. It's our evaluation, myself and my search consultant. We evaluate the reference checks and the quality of the application against the criteria that you have identified.
Okay.
And can we ask a question on that topic? Can I ask something about what you're saying?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Sandra.
Well, I'm not taking Gloria's time.
No,
but
go right ahead, Sandra. No
Well,
problem.
this is just an expansion really of what you're saying. I would ask you, do you check social media? And is that, if you do check it, is that a matter of every time, or is that just when you have a reason to, or what's that process?
We don't check in on all applications. Out of those 30 applications that I anticipate we would get probably 15 of them really won't meet the qualifications for the job, and there's no point checking those people. But those people that we think are viable candidates, we do check social media in order to see if there's anything that would rule them in or rule them out. Sometimes people make egregious mistakes on social media, and we don't want to have the school board be embarrassed in any way by something that a candidate may have posted on social media. So yeah, we do that. We do a pretty thorough reference checking.
Thank you.
Stacy.
Thank you. I just am curious about at what point in the process, it strikes me that if you're evaluating against the identified leadership attributes that the school district targets, that's
Yes.
done earlier in the process, earlier in the screening process, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Because some people won't meet those criteria at all, and then there's no point in doing reference checks on those. But
Okay.
candidates that we think might be a good fit, well, then we move from might to certainty as we do reference checks.
And so at what part in the search process do you do the reference checks?
When we think that the candidates might have the potential to be a good fit for your district, and I'll define a good fit as meeting those criteria that the board has established.
So that would be like after the initial interviews with the initially identified pool of candidates?
Yes. Yes, we will identify 5 to 10 candidates that we think can do this job well based upon their past experience, their past work experience, and the references that we have gathered. And then we do more reference checking to be sure of what we're talking about.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Gloria, do you have one more follow-up question on that?
I actually don't want to take up all the time, but yes,
That's
I
all
do
right. You have good questions. Go at it.
No, I do. I have some concerns about your candidates once you establish that you have 15 candidates that you want to interview. After you interview those candidates, is it possible at all for you to send those candidates for us, or how is that process going to take place?
Well, what we do is we make a chart that'll show the candidate's current position, past experiences that are relevant, education, and where they live. And so I can share all that with you if you want to know the totality of the candidates. But I also don't want to waste your time. I mean, that's why you hire people with expertise to do that work for you. So I can share all that with you if you want. Most school districts find it's most beneficial just to look closely at the top 5 or 10 that we look at. Am I answering your
Well,
question?
that's fine. I just wanted to have some kind of buy-in. I'm not want to take the job completely away from your consulting firm. However, I think it's important that we have some buy-in, and that's why I asked that particular question.
Yeah. Hey, another very critical part of our process that I should have mentioned is when we get down to those 5 or 10 candidates, we also ask them to do video interviews to save you time. So we asked them to do 3-minute video interviews, which are recorded and you can look at to help you make a decision. And so we asked them, the questions are, tell us about your skills and experience. Tell us about why you would be a good fit for the school district and what would you like to accomplish in your first 100 days. So, Gloria, that helps you to get some buy-in because you may look at those 10 candidates and say, oh, these 3 would never work here, or these 5 are really good, and whatever you might say. It helps you to look more closely at those people that we think are viable candidates.
No, I think that's a good idea because then we will have some type of buy-in. And I think that's important for our district to have that. Our district is unique in a lot of ways. It's really diverse. And we want to make sure that our candidates have that experience as well. So, and that's why I asked, but that Zoom 3-minute buy-in with the candidates is a great idea.
Yeah, it'll be three-minute videos. So, and that's why I
Yes.
say you've got some work to do as well as me. It'll take you some time to watch, an hour's worth of videos, but it's really time well spent because then you get a good feel for the candidates.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's good. And actually, I think it's important to note in kind of relationship to that, in phase 2, you do have built-in stakeholder input meetings, and then also mentioned the possibility of even making focus groups as we get further along to make sure we're getting something that's unique for the Nashua, to meet the Nashua needs of the community.
Yeah, and we'll need to talk more about that because every district has a different perspective and different expectation from their stakeholders. Some school districts have separate interviewing teams of administrators and a separate team for teachers and a separate team for support staff and a separate interviewing team from community members. You can do that. Other districts pick out a representative of the teachers, the administrators, the PTA or PTO or support staff groups, and then they have a compilation of those representative groups or representatives of those various groups that form one committee instead of several. So how that works best for your school district, I'll listen to your thoughts about what works best for you. But it's important, I believe. I mean, you've all been elected to represent your community by the residents of your community. So you are all well-respected people, and it's really the board's final choice, not the communities or any stakeholder groups. But typically, boards want to listen to the input provided by stakeholder groups. So you can decide what's the best way to do that for your particular school district to meet the needs of your stakeholders. And I can help you structure those questions as well. I've got a form for stakeholders to give input to the board. So I can help you work through all that as well.
Excellent. So my other question that I'd like to get down to is the money part of the consulting process. So it says in here that the fee structure is $16,900 for phases 1 through 5, with a total amount not to exceed $20,100 for online meetings. I'm assuming that traditionally when the price goes up under normal circumstances, it's because of travel needs for the consultant or possible candidates. Would that keep the cost down a bit in a Zoom format as we're looking at right now?
Yes. For example, in the spring of 2019, when COVID did not exist, I went to Manchester 4 or 5 times and did those stakeholder meetings in person. I went to Manchester and presented candidates. So there was travel costs and hotel costs and stuff like that. If we do this all via Zoom, there won't be. And likewise, you're going to have to decide how you want to interview your final candidates. You can do a whole lot of screening and weeding out via those Zoom videos that I showed you. And then you can probably do your first round of interviews via Zoom as well, which will save you on travel costs for candidates. Because typically boards pay for lodging and meals for candidates to come in from out of town. You may want to interview your final candidates in person, and if they're from out of the area, then you may want to put them up in a hotel and provide their meals and travel expenses. So those will be some expenses that you would have, but they're likely to be less in this era of COVID.
Can you break up the services? Can you break up your services? For instance, if I'm understanding you, the $16,900 is for 1 through 5. So if the board decided that they only wanted you to do certain parts of it, is that something that ever happens? Am I confusing you? I do that to a lot of people, by the way.
I actually don't get involved in the finance part of this very much, so I'm not sure I can answer your question. I just do the searches and the people in the home office handle the money part. So I'm not sure if I know the answer to your question, Sandra. Tell me your question again.
I'm asking you if we can break up your services. If you list how many services you are doing in this process, if we said that we wanted several of them, but we didn't want all of them, is that something you obviously haven't seen that happen?
I have not seen that happen because everything that I described to you really is essential to the process. There isn't any part that I would leave out.
I'm not saying it would be left out. I'm just saying that possibly you wouldn't be doing it. We would. Okay. Thank you. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just trying to understand.
Okay. All right.
Does anyone have, thank you, Sandra, so much. I think that was a good question. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Sandra.
In number one, Manchester, when you're saying that you helped with this situation in Manchester, is that the one that they just lost? Didn't they just lose a superintendent, or when was the time period that you're talking about? That superintendent has gone?
Well, no.
They have a new one.
Yeah,
John,
they have a new one.
I led the search in the spring of 2019. John Goldhart was hired, and to my knowledge, he is still there.
Okay.
Yes.
To give you an idea of the national search type that we do, he was the assistant superintendent in Salt Lake, Utah. And he ended up being the candidate that the board selected. But that gives you an idea of the national reach that we have to qualified candidates.
All right. I'm gonna hang up on whoever that is.
I have a question regarding money. Okay. After we hire a particular candidate, and you may know that because of the Manchester superintendent, are we responsible for their funds to come to Nashua, or is that wouldn't be part of your I want to say it wouldn't be part of your process?
It would not. You'd be responsible for that. You'd be responsible for that. But let me tell you what happened in Manchester. Two things you may be interested in. One is the Manchester board decided not to fly John Goldhart out to interview him in person. They conducted the final interview via Zoom. Yeah, okay, I'm confusing searches. They actually did bring him out there. And they paid for his flight. But here's something that could save you a little money. We contacted the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce was quite interested in the school being successful. They worked with some Chamber of Commerce members who had hotels and restaurants, and someone comped his hotels and restaurants stay.
Wow.
And probably, and the same thing has happened in several searches that I've done. Burlington last year, Burlington, Vermont, same thing. So I would expect that's probably true of Nashua too. I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce members want the school district to be successful. They likely have some vacant hotel rooms, and they may very well comp all that if they were asked to do so by you.
I'd be willing to make that call.
Saves a little bit of money.
So is it fair to say then that you would feel very comfortable with us calling Manchester for a reference?
Sure. Art Beaudry is the chair, and I could find you his number if you'd like.
Oh, no, I'm sure we've got that. That's not a problem. And I do have, I had one of staff say to me that because of the pandemic, a lot of the bigger cities like New York, where they've had really astronomical pandemic problems, that a lot of people are bailing ship in those states, moving out. Is that, do you find that to be true? Is that like, I think Rhode Island and California? I think California's had, I don't know, the big ones, obviously.
Yeah, I can't say, Sandra, why people are applying, but I can tell you, I just finished the Windsor search in Woodstock, Vermont. And Windsor's a very small community compared to yours, or Woodstock's a small community compared to yours. They had 22 applicants from 14 different states. So, we attracted plenty of applicants, but I couldn't tell you why they applied from different states.
Who wouldn't want to move to Woodstock, Vermont?
And, yes. And can I ask you about one of my concerns is that in the past, when I've been on these searches, for the more experienced, qualified, desirable candidates, it often became an issue of money. And obviously we're a small state. Our budget is not our budget doesn't touch Massachusetts anywhere close to it. So is that a consideration that you think will cost us some of the candidates?
I think it's a very important consideration. I think you need to offer enough money to attract people. Now, it is attractive that New Hampshire doesn't have an income tax. But that being said, you still need to ask yourself, are you offering sufficient money to attract talented candidates? If someone's coming from a smaller school district in in New Hampshire, then chances are, whatever you're paying your current superintendent might be a raise. But still, you have to put enough money on the table to attract someone. And we need to talk through that at some point, because candidates will call me and they'll say, what's the salary? For example, in Windsor, that happened, and the superintendent, wherever he was making more money than that at the moment and didn't want to come to Vermont, as nice as it was, to take a salary reduction. So you have to think about how much money is it going to take to attract a quality candidate. And the answer to that question is probably a little bit more than what you're paying now.
But so do you have when you're saying a little bit more, for instance, Manchester, that must be public record what he got.
Yeah.
So you can share that with us, right?
Well, I could if I remembered, but I don't.
I can understand that. I'm losing a lot of that.
So I guess in relationship to that, John, is that something that you could provide as part of your consult services as a recommendation of a salary range? I mean, I realize that
Yes.
Ultimately it's dependent on our budget and then the qualification of the candidate, all that kind of things. But you could recommend a basic starting point.
Yes. I will do some research on the salaries of superintendents in New Hampshire. And of course, your district is larger than most. But nonetheless, yes, I can make a recommendation to you about what range you ought to consider.
Okay, excellent. All right. So I was going to say for the team here, I'd like to try to start wrapping this up in the next 5 minutes or so. So, but go ahead, Stacy. It looks like you have a question.
Yeah, just a couple questions to dovetail what the line of questioning that Sandra's doing. Just in your experience in Manchester and in up in Woodstock, Windsor, is the salary range established up front and as part of the initial marketing for the position? And how attractive is moving to Southern New Hampshire? Southern New Hampshire has a fairly high cost of living than other parts in the country. So what was your experience? Were those factors in
Yeah, usually the board, sometimes the boards will say a certain figure and sometimes they won't. More often than not, they'll say salary commensurate with experience, which is vague, but they have an amount in mind, and I need to know at least the range if people are asking me, because like I say, some people, they want to come for a raise, they don't want to come for a reduction. So we'll need to be.
We wasted a lot of time in our last interviews just because of what you're saying. People applied who wanted over $200,000, 175 was. And we didn't get them, but we wasted a lot of time chasing them, thinking we might get them. So your point is well taken.
Yeah, exactly. People won't come for a reduction unless maybe they've retired from one state and want to come to another state. That happens sometimes. But in answer to your question, Stacy, about is Southern New Hampshire attractive? I think beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I was telling Jessica earlier, I've done a lot of bicycling in your area, and I think it's a pretty area. I think the proximity to Boston is nice. I think there's the proximity to the seashore is nice. There's a lot of nice things about your area, but that's my opinion. I think that's one of the reasons why those first two questions are important. What makes this community attractive, and what makes this an attractive place for students and staff to work? So maybe somebody from Arizona who likes hot weather would not be interested in Nashua, but someone from the Northeast quite likely would be.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. And Heather, did you have a question also to close up?
I did. It's just really quick. I'm wondering about like local and internal candidates in addition to a wider range. Is that something that can we simultaneously post it for ourselves? I assume that you're not, pulling from within our district.
Right. Well, you can, and not only can you, but you should. When we get all done, the stakeholder report and the brochure, the criteria you identify is first and foremost important, because then we can post the position once we know the board's criteria. And you should put that on your webpage, because maybe candidates either in your district or who know of the position will be looking at your website to find out where to apply. So you certainly can, and you may attract internal candidates. Manchester did. So you may. Burlington, Vermont, I did the Burlington search last spring at this time. They attracted internal candidates. So yeah, you can, but you should definitely post on your website the position description that you identify, the stakeholder survey results, and the brochure in that order. Because you want to help cast a wide net to attract quality candidates. We'll do so with those 5 sources I told you about, but you can do so as well.
And I believe that one of the things highlighted in your packet was that you guys ensure anonymity should candidates want that before we make the announcement of the finalized candidates.
We do.
Whether they're internal or external.
We do, and I'll ask you to do the same because the relationship between a superintendent and board is, I use the analogy, it's much like a marriage. It's based upon trust and working through issues and difficulties. And sometimes superintendents lose some credibility with their board if they know that, if the board knows they've applied elsewhere. They'll actually end up knowing anyway, because I'll call the board president. But nonetheless, anonymity of the candidates is helpful to most candidates.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. So from the committee members, is there anybody who has any more questions? All right. And I don't want to cut anything short, but we actually have a couple other agenda items today, Dr. Grotto, but we really appreciate this. This presentation has been excellent. In case we have any follow-up questions, I'm going to make sure all of our folks here have your email address so that they can send you ideas, if that's okay.
Sure. What I'll do, Jessica, when we are done, is I'll send you the presentation that I just shared with you, and that will have my email address on it.
All right. Excellent. And yeah, I hope if you ever come back this way sometime soon, the snow melts, we can go for a bike ride.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, all.
So, yeah, so I didn't want to try to cut anybody short here there, but I thought it was important that we make sure that we leave time for all the rest of the discussion too.
And we do people in the waiting room. So I don't know if you want to roll right into the next and then we can have discussion afterwards.
Does everybody sound good with that?
Yeah, I think that's wise. I don't want to keep people waiting for too long. I feel badly for getting off to a slow start this morning already.
All right, go ahead and roll them in, Tara.
Okay. We have Ms.
How many do we have?
Ms. Kathleen Williams.
Just the other one. The other one's is called BWP, and but if they're the consultants are coming in together, they're a team. So, hi there. Good morning, Dr. Hill.
Morning, yes. Oh, how about if I do that?
There you go. And is it Miss or Dr. Williams?
It's Dr. Williams. Oops.
Dr. Williams, thank you. It's nice to have you here with us. So
I don't know what just happened. Holy moly.
So I know you ladies sent us a final draft of your presentation this morning. So you're here, and I want to be clear that you're on the air for our local public cable access television, since this is an official committee meeting of the board. And with us today, we have Stacy Hines, who is our Director of Communications. We have Tara Kinsella, who's our Executive Assistant. We have Heather Raymond, who is the our President of our Board of Education.
Hi.
Sandra Ziem, who is the Chair of the
HR
Committee. and Gloria Timmons, who is another board member with vast amounts of human resources experience. So
Wonderful.
we have a pretty good, well-balanced team here going on. And I'm Jessica Brown, the chair of this ad hoc superintendent search committee, and I've been communicating with you. So I'll go ahead and let you ladies introduce yourselves.
Okay, are we going to be able to view the PowerPoint?
We can bring it up and share our screen, or if you'd like to share your screen, either way is fine with us, whatever's more convenient.
Well, let me share. Let me see if I can pull it up and share my screen, because in that way I'll be able to go through the slides. Or
that sounds perfect.
Let's see what happens. Okay, let me go to slideshow.
And actually, while she's doing that, we will be telling you a little bit more for the sake of saving time about ourselves during the presentation, if that's permissible.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we are in a screen share mode. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
so we're going to start. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to meet with you sort of face to face. But one of the things that we want to talk about as we introduce ourselves is how we feel that we have a connection to your district. And we happen to run across I think the high school, the mission statement from the high school, which talks about the desire to educate the whole child to empower student success. And the whole child philosophy is very close to my heart, because as former president of ASCD, we were the developers of the whole child movement, which in essence talks about children, for all children, to be healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. And so we feel that your mission, the mission as identified by the high school, really is in complete alignment with how BWP operates. So I want to go back. Okay, so BWP was formed, and I'm not going to, reading is fundamental, so I'm not going to read the slides to you, but I'm going to highlight some of the things. In terms of, as an organization, we've been around for a long time. We were one of the first national organizations. We've done quite a few searches through the years. And our claim to fame is that we really focus on personalized local service. Every school district is different, and every school district is unique. And we take that into consideration. While we have a template for conducting searches, we also have to recognize the nuances that your district might require, and we take that into consideration. So it's very personalized. And also to let you know that half of our directors of our board of directors are women or minorities. So there are 10 of us on the board. We have associates who we work with across the country, and they represent superintendents and university faculty. And we have a number of local offices, but our major office is located in Illinois, and both Dr. Williams and I are also primarily located in Illinois.
Good morning. Again, I'm Dr. Kathleen Williams, and as Dr. Hill just shared, BWP has an extensive network of partners and associates across the United States, and we will utilize all of them for Nashua if need be. However, for this particular search, Dr. Hill and I will serve as the co-lead consultants. We will assume full responsibility for all aspects of it. However, as I mentioned, we may use other BWP consultants and associates to assist us with things such as data collection, survey details, and conducting focus group meetings, as well as providing us information, research, and recommendations regarding potential candidates. Next slide, please. As I just mentioned, Dr. Hill and I will serve as the primary co-consultants for your school district, should we have the honor of serving you. And though you have in your proposal packet our complete and detailed resumes, we would like to underscore a few specific strengths that we believe that we personally can bring to this search. Dr. Hill is our managing director of the firm, and she comes with an extensive educational background, having served in a variety of administrative positions, including the superintendency from which she has retired. In brief, as you see on the slide, she will bring her expertise in management and leadership training, curriculum instruction, assessment and professional development, strategic planning and student engagement, and diversity and cultural competency. I too have a highly extensive experience in school administration and also have retired after 18 years as a superintendent in 3 school districts in 3 states, Kansas, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And as an aside, the school districts in both Kansas and Wisconsin were of similar size and similar student makeup as Nashua. Areas of expertise that I believe I will bring value to this search include student improvement research with highly diverse student populations, including working with children of poverty and English language learners. I also have a great deal of knowledge with regard to mental health related issues, conflict resolution, crisis management, collaborative practices, passage of referenda, of which I'm proud to say I've passed 3 in all 3 of the school districts in which I've worked. A great deal of experience in facilities, construction, and school safety, as well as alternative programming, which includes effective alternatives to suspension and expulsion. Next slide, please.
Let me just interrupt for a moment to say, as we're going through this PowerPoint presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them as we're going through. Of course, we will leave time at the conclusion of our presentation for additional questions, but you may have some specifics related to the slides in the PowerPoint.
And feel free, committee members, to just jump right in, because with the slides up, I can't necessarily see everybody's raised hands. So it's a free for all.
And there'll be time, I'm sure, at the end too. So with regard to the scope of our work plan, it consists of a multi-phased process to search for outstanding candidates for your position of Nashua School District Superintendent. At the onset, we will meet, we will confer, and we will plan with either your full Board of Education and/or your ad hoc search committee, whichever you so choose. And we will do this to establish all of the search parameters, including navigating laws and guidelines as related to COVID. And you may have noticed within the packet, we did include a page that talks about options that you can explore in that regard. We will set and finalize a customized and detailed search calendar that specifically meets your needs, your timelines, and a sample was also provided in the proposal. We will identify with you any customized services that you're in need of, if any. We will agree upon a communication plan to inform the board and also keep the community as a whole abreast of the search steps and the progress during critical milestones and stages of the search. And we will also immediately, upon meeting with you and with your approval, launch recruitment efforts by implementing a custom designed marketing campaign, which includes posting an initial position with prerequisites on a number of proven websites, of which I'll talk about momentarily. And then we will, of course, open an electronic web-based application system on our site, because I suspect people will immediately be wanting to apply once they hear of the vacancy. Next slide, please. The BWP process absolutely will honor and respect the perspectives of all of the members of the Nashua School District community, including school board members, teachers, staff, students, parents, community business members, and other community educational leaders, whomever you feel needs to be at the table. Each stakeholder and stakeholder group we believe will bring valuable feedback and data to assist in the development of the most desirous qualifications, experiences, qualities, skills, and attributes to create the leadership profile for your next superintendent of schools. And I might add that we will work with you to ensure that you can reach and have a voice from those members of your community that may feel somewhat marginalized. Additionally, we will gather qualitative and quantitative data throughout the stakeholder engagement process, which consists of interviews, focus groups, community forums, and a survey we would like to post on your website for people to access. We will develop thereafter a community audit, and we will share with you all of the details from that. And thereafter, a draft leadership profile will be created for board approval. And then once approved, we will update job postings and continue recruiting. Next slide, please.
Just as a period at the end of that sentence, Kathleen, with regards to community engagement, one of the critical factors in terms of the community with regards to transparency is for everyone to know what their lane is, what the expectations are relative to their feedback, their input, their responsibilities. In many communities, most that I've worked in, community members sometimes forget that the hiring of a new superintendent is really under the umbrella of the Board of Education, not the community. That the community's responsibility is to provide feedback and input. And that becomes a very important aspect in terms of keeping the community informed, not only about what the process is, but where their input and feedback will be invaluable in communicating, but they should not be expecting to vote for the new superintendent.
Thanks for adding that, Deb.
Yeah, that's a real key thing to start off from the very beginning with what the expectations are. And it really helps support the success of your new superintendent, because the new superintendent then doesn't have to come in and face, well, you weren't my pick for a candidate, I wanted the other person, and have to address those issues. They come in knowing that they have the support of not only the board, but also the community as well. So one of the things that we do is, in terms of our recruitment plan, in addition to providing information, and it does have Westbury on point 4 when it should be Nashua, but it still represents the fact that we have researched your community, and we will go out and sell you. You have a wonderful aspects to the community. I love the fact that you've been voted a great place on 2 occasions for kids to be raised and for families to be raised, and that's going to be attractive. And so we will not only seek applications, but we will also actually headhunt. We will go out and touch people on the shoulder that don't realize they're looking for this job by getting to know your community and being able to take that out there. We will utilize a profile, the leadership profile, in order to screen applicants and screen candidates, but we also will work with the board or the ad hoc search team to also utilize that document in order to screen applicants. And so those components really help us all stay on the same page. It also enables us to look for candidates that will specifically have skill sets and characteristics that you are looking for the new superintendent. BWP takes charge of all of that. We have an online application system. And once we get to a particular level, you will have access to those documents as well. But in order to maintain a high level of confidentiality, those records stay the property of BWP until you've identified those candidates that you'd like to move forward. Typically, once we post it, we get a number of applications. We try to, in working with the board, develop a calendar that will give you a minimum of at least 30 days for the application to be available and accessible. Then BWP, your consultants, we review the applications individually as well as collectively. Then we select a few, typically around 10 or 12, to interview as a follow-up. And then from that group, we designate 4 to 6 applicants that we think best meet your profile and provide you with an extensive training session to help you then best be able to conduct an interview session, both for a first level interview for maybe those first 4 to 6, and then a secondary interview for your top 2 or 3 candidates, and assist you in looking at contract expectations and moving forward. And then also speak with you about how to introduce your final selection to members of your community. So we talk about this identification and selection. Again, one of the important aspects is working with you, doing a training with you, helping you do the do's and don'ts of interviews so that, again, you can bring in a candidate who you have faith and confidence in and who has faith and confidence in with you with regards to their new role as superintendent. So again, once you have these interviews, you will determine the process and the schedule, and we will help you along the way. We will provide templates that you can choose to use or not use. We will provide opportunities to help you determine how you will reach consensus. We will talk more about how we can then notify the public, what kind of engagement you want the public to have, at what points. All of those are parts of what we do when we are looking at both the identification and selection opportunities.
BWP really has enjoyed great success in completing highly effective superintendent searches, so much so that we're willing to provide the following guarantee to the Nashua School District. Once we complete your successful search, our support isn't going to end there. We will continue mentoring at no cost both the superintendent and the board, if each so chooses, for a year to help support ongoing success and communication. Additionally, if the selected permanent candidate does not complete 2 years, BWP will repeat the search at no cost except for expenses only. And further, we will never slate a previously placed candidate in another search for the term of the initial contract. Next slide, please. Costs for our consulting services are provided in detail for you on page 8 of our proposal, but to give you a quick overview right now, our fee for consulting services is $17,500 plus expenses, but is limited to a maximum of $24,600. And the basis for this span is because the costs would differ if it is conducted virtually versus in person. Expenses for travel, etc., would weigh into that. Additional potential costs, which are also detailed and estimated in the actual proposal for you, include advertising on a wide variety of professional and educational sites, such as the American Association of School Administrators, the National Alliance of Black School Administrators, the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, and the New Hampshire School Administrators Association, for example. And there are other possibilities as well, depending upon your needs and your desires. Other additional costs might be accrued by you for in-district communications, candidate travel expenses, extensive external background checks, costs to conduct in-district meetings and site visits. So if the board should so choose to go to candidate school districts, and that's if you desire. Next slide, please. Deb.
Yeah, I was trying to make sure I had my slide page in front of me and not the next one. So BWP's track record. We've successfully recruited and placed minority candidates in a number of school districts. And so we just wanted to make sure to highlight that particular point. Most importantly, we have a high rate of success with superintendent placements and candidates remaining in those particular placements for a number of years. I was a BWP placement and I remained in my position for 7 years. And I know Kathleen, you might want to share one that you remained in as a BWP placement.
I was placed as one of the first, I was the first female superintendent in Lawrence, Kansas, where there were only 4 female superintendents at the time, which ages me, I know, but don't try to guess. Had great success there, and BWP placed me there as well.
We don't have any of our candidates. Question? We don't have any candidates that we have placed who were found to be negligent or criminal in the performance of their duties. And we provide timely communication to the board throughout the process with regards to the candidates that we are reviewing. We conduct an extensive Google search in terms of what's happening with regards to social media and share that information with you. We want there to be no surprises. And as we interview candidates, we also ask them if they have any skeletons in their closet so that we will have a heads up relative to issues that might arise with regards to their candidacy. We've got a strong reputation among clients and candidates. One of the things that our candidates tell us is they really enjoy knowing and feeling the confidential nature, and this applies to both in-house candidates as well as external candidates, and that we keep the candidates informed of their status. We provide, again, these extensive recruiting efforts. Not only do we headhunt, go out and touch people on the shoulders, but we also extend ourselves to our networking colleagues by sharing with them, again, the qualities and characteristics that you're looking for so that they can also recommend possible candidates. We also ask members of your community to recommend possible candidates. We have this comprehensive network, and again, personalized and customized to meet your search is one of our hallmarks. You have 2 very talented and devoted consultants who would love to work with you and serve you and serve the students of your community.
In summary, and to recap, BWP and Associates has completed, as I shared with you early, over 800 executive searches nationally, and we have a very strong understanding of how to place outstanding superintendents in school districts. We do believe BWP is unique and will offer you and the Nashua School District its personalized and tailor-made services. Dr. Hill and I, as experienced search consultants and former superintendents, will be available 24/7, and we will work with you closely and guide you each step of the way. We will help you conduct a transparent, inclusive, and robust engagement process to help you develop the leadership profile that ultimately will guide the best candidate match for you. And then we will identify and help you hire an outstanding educational leader with a commitment to meeting your district's collective interests while advancing your mission and strategic plan. Next slide, please. I think we stayed right within the time zone I promised, Jessica. So I want to thank you very much for your kind attention, and we would be happy to open it up for questions and answer any that you may have.
Thank you. Honestly, it's very impressive that you guys were able to get through that so cleanly and quickly. It was awesome. A great presentation. Appreciate it. I'd like to open the floor for any questions from the board members. And yes, Ms. Timmons, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. I do have a question regarding the final cost. If we recruit from this district, would that be part of, if we recruit from this district after hiring you, what cost would that be on our end?
If you're recruiting from within,
Within our community, within our community.
Right. If you're recruiting from within your community, first, those candidates will be treated just as any other candidates would in terms of levels of confidentiality. The cost factor really kind of remains the same, other than there's no travel. There's no travel for that individual, so there are no travel costs to you. But with regards to the community engagement component, one of the critical factors is for your community to have been able to have conducted an audit so that you have this profile, so that you know any internal candidates would match with any candidate nationally. And that becomes a really big component with regards to, looking nationally and figuring out that you have the best possible person. And guess what? They live right within your own community.
They would have been vetted just as any other candidate, because oftentimes school districts that recruit from within do not vet yes, they know them, but they don't vet them in comparison with the same vetting process as we do with any other candidate. And therefore, if you end up hiring somebody from within, you have full confidence that that person met the profile requirements and was examined with the same discretion as was any other candidate.
I have another follow-up question.
Go ahead.
I like the fact that you did research our community, and just to know that we was voted the best place to live in 1997 and all, it was fantastic. And that means you did your research and you did your homework, and I really appreciate that. One of the things that you said in the cost, though, I wanted to put that in. Thank you for that. The cost between 1,700 and 24 is that range is kind of extensive, I think, in my opinion. So can you tell me why that range is that way?
Okay, the difference is the difference in conducting a completely online virtual search. So if we're not having to fly to New Hampshire and stay overnight, typically we will come to a district 5 times during, before we got into this real phase that we're in right now. Typically we'd be in the district 5 times as consultants. We would come for the planning session. We would come to present the report. We might conduct the interviews right there in your home district. We would come to present the finalists. And so 4 to 5 visits for the 2 consultants is a part of that cost. If we are doing the majority of it via Zoom, as we're doing now, there is no cost to that. If we end up having to come once, there will be some cost, but it won't be what it would be if we came 5 times. And so that's really the difference. The difference between those two is if we don't have to travel there and stay there, then we don't charge you for that, and it really reduces the cost.
And we have proposals for fully virtual, hybrid, and then fully in. And with the hybrid, if you wanted a combination of each, for example, Dr. Hill could be talking with you virtually, I could be there personally. This is the personalized nature of it. Where are your interests and how can we best meet them? And we're willing to work with you on that, but we want to be forthcoming. But we do commit that we're not going to put you in a position, having been a superintendent and looking at those dollars, where it's so excessive it's not manageable.
Thank you.
That's good to know. I think what I'm kind of expecting from this process is that should we choose to hire a firm, the initial research and interviews will be conducted as you guys narrow down the candidate pool electronically. And then as we get down to the last handful of 3 to 5 candidates, at that point, we'd probably want to bring them in, at least get to know them, have them look at our district as well. So that I think that would probably be where most likely that extra cost would come in, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, actually, I was going to share with them a search that we're bringing closure to, very similar to what you just described.
And again, let me just back up and say that in this day and age right now, what we're finding is that we've done pretty much everything virtually until you get down to your final 3. Even the first round interviews have been done virtually. And one of the things that does is it really levels the playing field for everyone, because everyone is in the same kind of environment. But when you get down to your 3 semifinalists, those people that you really want to examine closely, that's when we recommend that it's face-to-face. And so those costs are what we consider costs of travel for the candidates. That's different from the cost of travel for the consultants.
Okay. One of my other questions, kind of, I guess it's not really related to that, would be more specific to your services. Do you guys provide or help us develop questions for our candidates so that we can make sure that even as we're doing our interviews, they're appropriate?
That's a part of our protocol training, and the development of both the questions that we use when we do our first level interview with the candidates and the questions that you use that we recommend and help you design and develop. They go back to being based on that profile, so that you're asking questions that get you to the responses. For concrete example, you may want to have someone talk about their experiences with budgeting, because you and the community have determined that you want someone that has fiscal management skills. And so there should be a question, both at our level of interviews and at your level of interviews, that will get you to the experience of that individual relative to how much they have, or whether they have, or what their process is, what kind of collaboration do they do in terms of the budgeting process.
Yeah, when I was reading your strategic direction, there was a real focus on school safety, and there was a focus on at least the community was very interested in opportunities for students in the vocational field as well as what you had. So if that was important on the profile, that would be a key point we would want to look at. If I noticed from 2012 until this year, your community has grown exponentially in the number of Hispanic students. And so there may be something that you're interested in with a person who can bring a sense of equity, access, and opportunities to all students that might be directed at other students. Your poverty level might be growing. All of those things we get to in the nitty-gritty. And to add what Dr. Hill said, we also provide you, we can help develop the questions, we can present them, we can fine-tune them for you, but we will also give you a rubric, a grid of which you can all commonly know how you're going to rate somebody. For example, Ms. Timmons might think, oh, this guy is so great, and give the person a 3. But another person might be saying, oh, I don't think they're so great, I give them a 2. But a rubric will tell you exactly what a number 1 means, a number 2 means, and a number 3 means. So there's more consistency for you as a board, and we can help you develop that as well. When I said we take you step by step, we take you step by step and anything in between. We will also help you. I don't recall, Deb, if you mentioned, we can help you even look at contracts that you may be considering to offer. We can assist you with that as well.
So that actually was going to be my next question, was to make our district also more enticing. Do you have something that you could help us develop a compensation package before, so that people, we're clear with candidates? We don't want to get down to 2 candidates and find out we just can't afford one. So, you know.
Yeah.
One of the first things we do, and this is a part of our planning meeting, is we talk about what your salary range would be. And so then when we are looking at applicants and applications, one of the questions on our application is what the person's currently making in their job. And so we would not encourage someone, if your range is, 140,000, and that's kind of the top of where you're going, we wouldn't encourage someone whose salary is 250,000 to apply for this position. And that all gets sorted through the whole application process initially. The second thing that we do is, when you get down to your final 3, we ask the applicants to complete a contract expectation form. You will only get that form when you get to the one individual that you are considering. And that can be a point of where you begin to negotiate your contract by looking at what they expect and what your capabilities are relative to those 2 pieces. So you can start off from a level of having information about what they would like to have and what you can provide. And so we find that that's very helpful in getting contract discussions started as well.
Additionally, I am betting that your HR director and/or your CFO are usually in the chief business officials organization in each state. I've been in 3 states, and they all do this. They have, they maintain files that let you know what the ranges of salaries are in different size districts across the state. And so that also can be used as a guide point. And you look at, is this person bringing a great deal of experience or limited experience? So there's a range within each segment of contracts, if you will, with different positions that can also help guide you. And we can assist with that as well.
Anybody else have any questions?
And
Go ahead,
Sandra.
Sandra.
When I believe it's Dr. Hill, when you were discussing the contract and you were saying what was included in it, is it your my question is not about money, but in the contract, we just recently did a job profile, the job description, but what is the difference in what goes in the job description and what goes in the contract? Because in my mind, there was a very key component that I thought we needed to communicate to whoever we're fortunate enough to get, hopefully fortunate enough to get. And so I guess I couldn't discern how you qualified what goes into the contract and what goes into the job description.
Okay, let me divide it into 2 spaces. One of the things when we do our initial advertising is we're not salary specific. We say, within a range of this or this, or we say competitive salary for the area. So that's the first piece in terms of what gets publicized with regards to your contract component. The second part, however, is we don't develop the contract. We assist you in developing the contract. We look for your HR people and your attorneys and other people, but we provide you with information about if you don't have, for example, some of the things that other districts may do to offset a dollar salary is, provide a different kind of compensation. So we talk with you about what those possibilities might be. That really all comes sort at the end, really after you've identified and selected.
I don't think that's what I'm asking you. What I'm asking you, I guess my specific question is that in we have 18 schools.
Mhm.
We have 12 elementary schools and 3 middle schools and 2 high schools. And so we have the heads of each of those, obviously, and then we have the superintendent at the top.
Mhm.
Well, in my view, it's critical that the board hears from all 3 of those components sometime during the year, so that we know what's going on on each level. And so I in my mind, I thought maybe that should go in the job description. But then somebody else said to me, no, I think that might go in the contract. And so I hope that's a little clearer for you. I apologize for the.
Let me ask a clarifying question. Are you talking about the contract between the search firm and the district, or are you talking about the contract?
Good question. I'm talking about the contract with the superintendent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the intent is you're trying to hire a superintendent for your district, for all the schools in your district.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the expectation is that whatever that compensation is, that's inclusive. It's not just for the high schools. It's not just for your elementary schools. It's inclusive because you are looking for a superintendent of schools, plural. The same thing is true in terms of our contract with regards to working with you. We are talking about working with the entire district. So when we start looking at community engagement, we're talking about community engagement with all, I think I had 19 schools, all 18 of your schools, all of the communities associated with it. And so within, I think in trying to respond to your question, there is no differential in terms of individual buildings. It's collectively the school, the entire school district.
What I'm saying to you is, and I apologize, I must not be, it's that Southern drawl, What I'm saying to you is that basically I feel that the superintendent needs to recognize that for the board to make good decisions, we need to be knowledgeable. We need to know what's going on in all 3 of those units. And each is middle school from high school is totally different. Elementary is again.
Of course.
So during the course of the year, that superintendent needs to keep the board informed by bringing in, at one time, the middle school leadership would come in and present what they're doing. Another time, the elementary, another time. So if you wanted to be sure that that was done, because communication, in my view, that's been one of our problems, in my view. So that being the case, would you put that desire for them to do that? Would you put it in the contract, the superintendent's contract, or would you put it in the job description? What's the difference?
What you can do,
the job
I think I understand what you're saying, and Deb, you can concur with me or not. This is done very simply. The contract for the superintendent is outlining compensation and benefits mainly. It's also talking about cause for dismissal, but you can always put in a clause that says this contract is based upon the superintendent fulfilling the requirements in the job description. You wouldn't list that all out necessarily. Would you agree, Deb, that you just make a reference to that?
And the first part of your question with regards to whether it goes in the description, I go back to the profile. If the board and the community determine that that's a critical mass, that visibility, participation in, understanding, communication about is a part of what you want as one of your skill sets and characteristics, that's absolutely included in the posting. That's absolutely a question that we would ask on your behalf and that you would ask as a part of your interviews. So it has that double-edged component that the expectation, as I said, is that they're going to engage and bring the whole district in. Now, one of the suggestions would be, if that's a concern for the board, when you are at the point where you're doing interviews and asking that question, you could ask for actual examples of how they've accomplished that. How have they accomplished sharing with the entire district or sharing with the board what's happening in each of those levels? And so that you get people who come in and give you examples of how they've done just what you're expecting them to do in this particular position and role.
So if they, can I just drill a little bit further? And I appreciate, Kathleen, one of your comments was very much appreciated. It was something I felt I needed. So thank you for that. And not to say that yours weren't, they were as well.
It's okay, I don't take it personally.
But
I want to record that and play it back to her later is what I want to do.
much like a husband and wife, right? So I'm sorry. So then you could, so I go again to this. My concern was that if let's say that we got a superintendent and it wasn't going well. And it was because these things weren't happening that should be happening, that we, again, for the board to make good decisions, we need to have information on which to make those decisions. So my thing was that it should be somewhere where when we sat down doing our reviews of the superintendent, we could say, if you go back to the job description, if you go back to the contract, if you go back to, in this case, though, that's why your suggestion was so great, because it could be in both places. Then you could say, you will see that we requested this and it didn't happen. And we feel that because it hasn't happened, we as a board haven't been able to make as good a decisions as we should make. And so that was, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I digressed a lot, but you helped me a lot on that, and I appreciate it. That's it, because I think that's critically important to communicate to him or her or whoever it happens to be.
Or her.
What we expect. Well, yes, we like women. So, thank you. Sorry.
Well, let me add, and we might be able to assist you with this as well. What you were talking about, Sandra, has to do with the supervision and evaluation process more than anything. And at no time ever should an HR director and or a board of education find itself in a position at the end of the year where they're going, what the heck just happened? We're unhappy. So with a rigorous supervision and evaluation process that is routine and regular, with the new superintendent giving you feedback and you giving them feedback, there should be no surprises. And you're always going back to the job description, evidence, etc. But that's for a lengthier time, which I would be more than happy to have that discussion, because I think it would make for a very positive relationship between board and superintendent. And you can meet your interests without having any surprises, particularly devastating surprises.
And let me do the follow-up with a concrete example. After a superintendent was hired for one of the districts that I did the search for, the board president came back and said, we're not sure what we want to do for evaluation. Can you help us? And so I was able to provide them with some written documentation, some written examples of what superintendent evaluations look like. It is a process that should be engaged in with the superintendent, not independent of the superintendent. They were given some examples of places they could call that were similar in district and size to them, to talk to their board president or talk to their superintendent to find out how they did the evaluation process. So we could be available to provide you with the background and information, but that's definitely a part of the evaluation. But on the flip side, again, the involvement and engagement in schools may be one of those skill sets that you want people to know ahead of time is a high expectation for this district. And that would be included in the profile.
So do you ever give a price range in which you think our districts, for instance, would be competitive with the candidates that were applying? No.
Again, Kathleen, you want to respond to
well,
that?
I would say I would like to look at, usually there are quartiles of salary ranges that I'm guaranteeing you, they exist in New Hampshire, and you would look
Oh, no,
again.
we absolutely have. No, what you're
Yes.
saying, we absolutely have.
Right.
Unfortunate part about
And
New Hampshire is
also
we
that you
have
have to take, you have to take in consideration the challenges of the district, et cetera. But you can look at those ranges and say, you know, other districts, you know, superintendents, they list the highest paid to the lowest paid. They list them according to enrollment as well as to your region. And you can just look at that and you should know your range.
No,
And I could
So
help you
actually,
sit
Miss
down and look
Ms.
at
Dean,
that.
if we can, I'd like to maybe give a few other committee members a
sorry,
chance
go
to ask some
ahead.
questions, if you wouldn't mind.
No.
Just in the essence of time, I'm thinking maybe we have another 10 minutes, because eventually we gotta let the staff eat lunch. So,
Well, and excuse me, Deb, when did you have to leave?
I'm gonna need to leave it about 5 more minutes, but
all right, so let's go ahead and circle it back around. Anybody have any other questions about the, for BWP? Go ahead, Stacy.
Thank you. Yes, I just, you had mentioned, I believe Dr. Williams, you had mentioned earlier in the presentation that as a part of your marketing efforts, you named several professional organizations that you would market our need for a superintendent. But could you just expand on that a little bit about how you would market Nashua, New Hampshire, and our advertising for a superintendent?
Right. Well, one of the first things we do, I believe you have a communications director, correct? Aha. Okay. So we would want to sit down or have you engaged in the process of a discussion, because you're the best person to describe Nashua as a community and Nashua as a school district. While I'm familiar, because I have 3 grandchildren that were born in Manchester, and I had a path flying back and forth and came through Nashua a few times, you're going to know better than me the highlights that would draw a candidate. That's the prerequisites. We're looking for a candidate who can oversee the number of high schools, elementary schools, et cetera. And then you would talk about Nashua, and that's what we post initially. And then once we do the focus groups, the interviews, the survey, we will bring back quantitative and qualitative data to you and put together that profile. And now that's what we actively begin recruiting and extending to. So for example, we conduct searches all over the United States, and a number of districts your size, like I said, Lawrence, Kansas and Wausau, Wisconsin have the similar breakdown in schools, etc. So if any of those districts like size that we might be doing, we look and see who are some great candidates, and we might, that didn't make it, but are awesome candidates, because you know you can only pick one, and we would look at that grouping. We would outreach, we would send that very detailed profile to our colleagues everywhere saying, Nashua School District, 11,000 students, to high schools, blah, 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 with these qualities, was looking for a person. If you have run across anybody, please let us know. And they will contact us. I can tell you, I did a search in Minnesota last year, and the person they hired was exactly what Deb had said, did not apply for the position, but interviewed for another position that our colleagues were involved at, and they were very impressed. So I did some research on this individual and reached out, and he interviewed just through the process, and they hired him. So our network really is important. There are college professors. For example, Deb is highly involved with ASCD. You also go to the National School Boards Conference, and we advertise and market there at AASA as well, and she's interviewed people there. Just a plethora of ways, but we begin working with you for that initial posting. And we would be working with you when we post a survey on the site. We try to work hand in hand with you. We don't try to trump over your role. We kind of will work as a team, but we don't want to add extra work to you either. So we work hand in hand, and it might be you, it might be somebody else, to let us know, for example, when we're doing those focus groups, who we reach out to, or who you help us reach out to. Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me just add one other point. Any publications and communication, the board approves before anything happens. So working together to create the ads that might go in the publications, you get to approve those before they're placed.
Yes, absolutely.
You get to select which of those publications. We'll give you a list and say, here are the ones that are available. Here's what we recommend, not only in terms of placing an ad, but how long that ad should run, those kinds of things. But all of that, all of those details are approved by the board.
And those are just examples. We're not saying you need to do that. Education Week is another possibility. My last search in Minnesota, they had a very active Native American population and wanted outreach. While there are Native American national associations, not all of them advertise, or they don't advertise, they spread the word. So I sent the detailed job description to them and said, please. And the Latino Association also networks with the Native Americans as well. But you tell us, you know, we're very interested in, and will find options for you to pursue, and the costs associated with them.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
Heather, go ahead.
Oh, there goes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Hill and Dr. Williams, for taking time to really answer all these questions. I just have one final one that I don't think was answered yet or asked yet, and that is timelines. So we are hoping to have somebody start July 1st, like every other district that's doing a search now. How quickly do we need to get the process rolling were you to be selected? And how quickly would you need us to start scheduling, like meetings and focus groups and those kinds of things?
It really boils down to the sooner the better. You are now in the beginning of superintendent hunting season. And so consequently, there are lots of other districts out there, but like I said, every district is unique. Typically, it's about a 16 to 22 week process. We start with asking the board, so when would you like to have this announcement made and this selection done? You want to build in transition time between the current superintendent and the new superintendent if you want to have a July 1st start date. So, but we start and we work backwards from when you would like to be able to make that announcement, and then try to fit that in, try to work that around the school calendar, your schedules. I think the hardest part for me to conducting a search is trying to get all of the board members to be able to select 2 sets of dates. The first set for the initial interviews, that's typically 3 days, where you're going to be together for 4 hours at least, maybe 5, and then following up with another 2 days or so when you're going to be doing interviews. Just trying to get that calendar created so that because everyone needs to be there and needs to be a part of the process in terms of making that selection. But getting that calendar becomes a critical mass. All of that takes place at that initial meeting. So
the first meeting.
The sooner you have the first meeting, the sooner we can design the timeline, where you're going to go. When you get ready to do community focus groups, you have to have at least 2 weeks in which you've notified people that they've been invited to participate. And in order to do that, you have to have developed who you're going to invite and how that's going to be done. So all of that planning. So the creation of the timeline is the critical mass. The sooner that gets done, the sooner we get started. Once you hire BWP, the first thing we do is work with your communications person to get the ad posted. That happens kind of simultaneously to this planning. So all of those processes, but you're in a good place now in terms of getting started, but you can't really afford to kind of drag your feet on this, because then it shortens the window. And when you shorten the window, you have less opportunity. And you also are in competition with superintendent searches all across the country.
Thank you for clarifying that for us. We appreciate that. Did you have a follow-up, Heather? No?
No, that was a pretty thorough answer. I'm entirely overwhelmed by the process, but
Well,
Well, that's why we're going to get somebody to help us. We're not going to be
The good
overwhelmed.
news
They're
is
going to work. It's going to be easy breezy.
it will be it will be probably the most rewarding experience all of you will have. It pulls a board together, and we do all the heavy lifting.
Well, we do most of the heavy lifting.
Well, most of the heavy lifting. You have to interview and decide.
But for example, just determining who you want to invite for the focus groups. You have to identify which groups. So if you have a ministerial alliance, and you have the Chamber of Commerce, and you have your staff, and you have your teachers, and you have your administrators, typically there's a list of anywhere from 9 to, I think we've had as many as 20 groups identified, depending on the size of the district and what kind of groups they have. Just getting to that point to say, okay, here are the groups we need to invite. How many people are we going to invite through those groups? Are we going to invite 1 or 2 representatives? I did a search recently where somebody wanted to invite everybody in all of those groups. It was like, no, not quite. Can we pare that down a little bit? So again, those decisions need to be made. That's done at the beginning in the planning portion, which is why it's important to get started on the planning.
all right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. All right. I think we've taken a good deal of your time, and we really appreciate you being here with us today. Is there, as the committee feel comfortable letting Dr. Williams and Dr. Hill sign off?
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, our pleasure. Very nice meeting you all, and much success in your search.
And if you have any further questions after you've kind of gone through the whole process and you have follow-up questions, feel free to give us an email or a phone call, and we'll be able to get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for being here today.
too.
You're welcome.
you.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Stay safe. Stay warm.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
So for, I guess, next up, team, we have to decide, does everyone have a few minutes, or do we have to reconvene at a later time?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you wanting to vote?
Hello?
Well, no, this is what I think. I was thinking we should maybe slip into a non-public meeting, and then we can have some discussion if there's time. I don't know for sure if there's going to be some follow-up questions that we need to develop. So I don't know if we'll have a decision made for a board decision today, but I think that's how we should probably do the process. We can talk about it a little bit. Go ahead.
While I was gone, did we talk to Mr. Donovan about the monies? Did we ever get a follow-up on that? I'm sorry, I was gone 10 days, so I'm out of the loop.
Mr. Donovan has been invited to this meeting, and if I run down the hall, he'll jump on if we need him to jump on.
Okay, excellent. Well, so I guess I'm looking for a motion from the voting members to move into non-public.
Hang on, I'm just looking at.
Oh, and I have to say which RSA. I'm sorry. Under contract negotiations, I don't know which. I don't have the paper with me. Hold on.
Contract negotiations is under E. But that's no. E is litigation.
Right.
Hiring of any person as a public employee. Would this be RSA 91A3?
Yeah, but we need to know which one.
Hiring any person would be B.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we move into a non-public session under RSA 91A 32B.
Okay, second.
All right, so for the vote, Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
yes, Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
and Ms. Brown votes yes. And so we will move into non-public at 12 o'clock p.m.
All right. The sign was up for a second.
Oh, okay, so.
All right, we're live.
Okay.
All right, we are back in a public meeting at 12:49 p.m. So I would like a motion to seal the minutes
Okay. I move
under
to-
RSA 91A 32B.
So moved.
All right, and seconded by Ms. Ziem.
Yes.
All right, and Ms. Ziem, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jessica Brown votes yes. So actually, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, so moved, seconded by Ms. Ziem. And then Ms. Ziem, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
And Jessica Brown votes yes. We are adjourned at 12:49 p.m. at 2/11/2021.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys all for your time.